Matilda. Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a little series I do here on this channel where I cover a crash course to New Zealand. Whether you're looking to move here, whether you've just moved here, or even if you want to travel here. So to start off, I'll explain a little bit about myself. My name is Matilda. I live here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I have lived in the South Island and the North Island. The topics that I will be covering will be food, taxes, salary, money and jobs is one, social, and political, which will include religion and Māori. These 5 are not representative of everything, of course, but they were the first 5 that came to my mind that I thought were the most important. If you would be interested in knowing more about housing, custom, the people, the fashion, like the clothing that people wear, what it's like living rurally versus in the city, I can do another one. The first section that I will be covering today is food. Under food, I wanted to talk about 3 things: supermarkets, dairies, which are like bodegas or mini-marts, and then common foods that people eat in their homes or that are served in common places. Okay, to start with supermarkets, it's important to know the 3 main supermarkets. These are New World, Pack and Save, and Countdown. Now known as Woolworths. It used to be called Countdown, so if anyone calls it that, you'll know what they mean. The typical hours are Monday to Sunday. Sometimes Sunday they close a little bit earlier, depending on the supermarket. That's kind of pretty normal, but they're open pretty early, usually from like 7 AM to 11 PM. Now what you can generally find in them is a lot of really good produce, a lot of typical Western food. You also have your international section in most of these supermarkets. These often cover some Asian food because of Aotearoa, New Zealand's proximity to Asia, Mexican food, Indian food, some European and some South African. There is more of course, but that's pretty much sums up what you'll mostly find. I think that's due to the immigration. I also wanted to mention that there are supermarkets called Asian supermarkets. These are very common and you'll find loads of different types of Asian food in there from multiple different countries. I will say, like, as a student and stuff, shopping there was often a lot cheaper. You could get things like noodles, fruit, veg, and then like your meat or your tofu cheaper. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. The common knowledge about the 3 main supermarkets is that New World is the most expensive, then Countdown / Woolworths, and then Pack and Save is the cheapest. Some typical costs I wanted to go over of just some typical things that you might buy at the supermarket. So bread, and I'll put the amounts here. A regular loaf of bread costs this much. A nice loaf of bread costs this much. Rice costs this much. A can of beans or tomatoes costs this much. A pint or a litre of milk costs this much. A brand of chocolate that is typical to New Zealand costs this much. There is cheaper of course, but this one's like what a lot of people commonly buy. A common peanut butter, common to New Zealand, costs this much. And lastly, meat costs this much. Moving on to dairies. Wow, this is gonna be a really long video. Oh well, I better just power through. Dairies, you commonly find pies, sausage rolls, hot chips, hot wedges, chocolates, gum, some like sanitary products, health products, and bread. That's pretty common. And you can also find like, sometimes you get like sunglasses, pens, chargers, like random things like that too. Okay, The last section is common food or common dishes. I would say that very much varies house to house. There's the typical New Zealand European food. New Zealand European food is what's eaten most typically, or what is known most typically. But there are so many other different foods that are eaten depending on what your background is or what house you live in. What is common is a dish with 2 veg, 1 meat, and then 1 carb, like a rice, pasta, or potatoes. That's very typically European, and I'm sure it comes from there. And then things like spaghetti bolognese, lasagna, pizzas, burgers, barbecue food in general. Some top New Zealand dishes or foods that people might know are pavlova, cheese and marmite rolls, or fairy bread, pies, LMP. I will also mention that Māori cuisine or the indigenous cuisine is not as widespread in things like restaurants or that way. Yeah, I will say you can get a restaurant for pretty much most cuisines around the world that are common. This is amazing. I would say New Zealand has a much richer restaurant culture than a lot of people realize, which is obviously great. What I'll say about like dietary restrictions, I'm not entirely sure about some of them, but I do know that if you're vegan, it's harder to be vegan in the South Island when you go to restaurants and things like that, or in rural places. But it's not impossible. There's often a vegetarian option. But at home, of course, you can easily be vegan. Okay, that's all for today and for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you learned something new about food here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!